Hey guys, it's Jill. It is Monday, the 13th of January, and I am taking the cyclone here. I'm going to try and erase a little bit of it. And today, I want to do something a little bit different, and I want to deep dive into the cyclone. So instead of standing outside of it, I want to show you what my experience has been like inside it. Because I have been desperately searching for some kind of logical process as to why God put me through what he has for the past couple of years. There have been a lot of things that I didn't exactly think were fair. And it has been a long journey, like a really long journey. And I couldn't escape it. I couldn't get off of it. It wasn't a path that I was allowed to deviate from. So I think I'm going to try and start at the beginning and kind of fast forward quickly to where we are now. And I just want to grab a piece of paper quick. That's a surprise tool we're going to use later. So in 2018, I was fired from my job. Basically, I was asking a lot of questions and trying to change things, but in the end, I guess we'll say I was kind of tricked into giving up my position. I did something at Christmas time. I was supposed to be off hours, but mom asked me to do something. In hindsight, I think that she was set up to do so to see if I would respond, but it's really always been my belief that social work should be more social. So anyways, that January I was let go for my job, and it was a relief because it was something that while I loved it, it was very taxing. It was emotionally draining, and there were a lot of things I was seeing that I didn't agree with. So I decided that I would take some time and that I wanted to be self-employed. I didn't want to work a 40-hour week. I had 2 kids. I wanted to be doing my own thing. So fast forward to April of that year. I had been putting together kids yoga things. I had been to a couple local gyms, trying to get people on board with what I wanted to do, which was at that time just teach kids yoga. And I did get on the schedule at a couple of places, but nobody came. Like, people weren't bringing their kids. And so I started hitting the wall, and I was like, man, where am I going to go, right? So this is me up here in April of 2018. And I had 2 kids, and this marker does not work. And we were sustaining and having a fun time. And I went one night to a place, and we're gonna say it was inside the cyclone. I went to this dive bar that I don't know if I'd ever even been in there before, but I met this magical beast. And from the moment that I saw him, I thought, wow, I've known him before, or I know him. And when I looked back a second time, and his eyes met mine, I knew that I wasn't wrong, like something was about to transpire. And in that moment, I started both planning my escape and planning our wedding. We spent 16 months pretty much inseparable. I was trying to pull him from generational curses, crazy toxic family members, addictive cycles, drinking. Largely, he didn't do those things when he was with me. He never let my kids see him like that. He was a great person when he was with us. And when he was with my kids, he taught my son how to fish and how to ski. And my son, to this day, loves those things. He taught my daughter about how to play practical jokes on people. And, we really connected on a specific level. But a lot of people didn't appreciate our relationship, my parents being one of them. And he really was a catalyst for me walking away from my own parents, my mom and my stepdad, who were extremely toxic. And I had been identifying that more and more, but 2018 was really the year when it all kind of came to fruition. It was like a slap in the face. I was like, hey, a lot of the stuff that happened in my childhood wasn't okay. And I was identifying a lot of that through him, but also a lot of things that were taking place. So I separated from my own family that year and I went to do my own thing. Now, the following June of 2019, my partner here put himself in jail for a drunk driving accident, and sort of ripped himself from our lives. And I was devastated, right? But I was still working at this idea that I had for a space for teens, because I really thought that if we had a community space, the kids would have a place to go. And he had a younger brother who was 15 at the time. And I identified with like all of the things that were going on within their family, and that, it just wasn't a healthy environment. And I thought if we could give these kids a space to go that was free, that they could hang out and like be and do and create, that wasn't home and that wasn't school, that was safe, that we could really be doing something. And it was really hard to get a lot of people on board with that. And I hit a lot of dead ends, and I started to become sort of disillusioned, I guess, in everyone else's jaded perspectives of it's not really worth it, or there are places taking care of that. And I went to a lot of local establishments, the YMCA being one, where the woman at the desk looked right at me and she was like, a lot of people don't want those kids here, Jill, the kids that you want, because the people in the big White House over there, the people in City Hall, their kids come here, and the wealthy kids come here, and they don't want to intermix those kids outside of school. And I thought, okay, and that was a heartfelt thing. Like, she really spoke those specific words to me, and I went, right? But she wasn't wrong. She wasn't wrong. 2020 was a mess for a lot of people. 2020 was hard. In 2020, I surrendered my home and my vehicle. And my kids and I ended up moving to the church at First Presbyterian. Ironically, in December of 2019, I had been hired as our youth pastor. And when I was really pushing for like having the school and having the space, all of a sudden we were shut down and we couldn't have people, right? And if we did have people, we had to mask them, and that became a whole game. And so I really retreated into myself. And that was when I picked up my 200-hour yoga certification, because I needed something. I had to go internally because the external was just, I was drowning. And a funny thing that year, I had submitted a plan before all the craziness. Actually, I think it was during the craziness. I think it was in the summer, because the BTW program and the Y program were still going to run summer programs, and I really wanted to get in on that and get kids, even if we had to mask them, even though those programs at the time were not masking, especially if they were outside. And I had like all of these Bible passages about shelter and being a good shepherd and being a good friend. And I was told, you can't a la carte the Bible, Jill. And I went, oh my goodness, right? And that was one of the most profound things that someone had ever said to me. And that year was the year that I learned that clergy are just people. And that was so hard for me. So hard for me, because all of my life I thought if there was someone that I could look up to, it was the people of God. It was our pastors and our priests. And then all of a sudden it was like, whoa, no. And I had known that because I knew a lot of like priests and chaplains who were wildly, alcoholic or had like their own closet addictions. But it really came to the fore that there really wasn't anyone who wasn't just human. And so I stopped putting those people on a pedestal. In 2021, I had gotten back on my feet. I was in the home that I'm in now. I was kind of working for myself, and I was doing the doula thing. And I kept asking God, I was like, what is going on here? Because he just kept like breadcrumbing me or pulling me down this string of like, we're going to do the prenatal yoga. So I did that in 2021, 2022. And I kept going down this road of the doula thing, and I kept asking, is he going to come back to me? Because at this time, he was out of jail in the middle of 2020. And instead of coming home to me, he went back to his mom and the friends and the addictions. And I thought, man, what am I doing? Why am I waiting, right? And God was like, just be patient, just wait, Jill, just wait. And I thought, okay. And so in 2021, I got this phone call, and his kid brother, in living in all the chaos at home and apparently new chaos at school, didn't see a way out, and he took his own life. That was the first time my kids ever watched me scream, cry, and grief, and we had been through some stuff. But that day I just fell on the floor, just in a pile of myself, and I said, I don't understand. I don't understand. So I started applying for grants again, and a lot of times I was told no. Women-owned grants, local community things, and I started hopping around to like local community events. And a lot of things that women were saying to me were really heartbreaking. It's like we do this thing where we lie to ourselves, right? Like everything is okay, the world's not on fire. But 2025 is going to show us that things were not okay. Things were not okay. Also that year, I met two young girls. They were, I don't know, maybe 11 and 15 at the time, maybe a little older than that. And the little one, who is now probably maybe 16, this one is, well, I think she just turned 20. The little one had just gotten the snot beat out of her, and it was videotaped, so a lot of people saw it. And so I went to the school board meeting where I met the older sister, and I asked her, I said, what happened here? And she was like, well, there had been some beef, and they caught my little sister alone, and so time was up for her, I guess, and they plopped the floor with her. But why are we teaching our kids to fight like this? Why are we teaching them such chaos? Because a lot of people were like, well, maybe she got what she had coming to her. But teaching our kids to fight like this, and for the next 2 or 3 years, my son was in the middle school, and it really was just a whole mess of fighting and chaos and nonsense. This year, we seem to have gotten a little bit better handle on that, but it took a long time to get there. In 2023, this one came back around again, and this was like the third time that he had come back into my awareness and was like, I still do care about you, but I'm going to do what I want to do. And I was like, okay. And by this time, he had really picked up this strong affinity for Coke. And that was really hard for me. But when you live in toxic cycles of addiction, and your buddies are doing it, and our drugs are full of it, and we just keep sweeping it under the rug and lying to ourselves, then what else could I expect, right? In refusing to ascend with me in the development into the drugs, he met this one, and now she is carrying one of these. And in typical monkey see, monkey do fashion, the little one went and found herself one of these and is also now carrying one of these. In both of these bloodlines, there are miles long addictions, felonies, abuses, traumas, just chaos that's never been rectified, right? And the other day I was asking God, I was like, what am I missing here? And he was like, you're missing the higher perspective, Jill. The fact that I'm showing you all of this and that it is the cyclone and that it just keeps swallowing these kids, because when they come from toxic cycles, I mean, I couldn't overcome his dissonance. So he just wanted to do whatever he wanted to do until he went full-blown coke addict on me. And I was like, oh, yikes, right? But it was a choice. It was always a choice. And he knew that. In 2021, after his brother passed, he sent me a message. And he was like, you were probably one of the only people that really tried to put me on a better path. And I was like, I begged, man. I cried. I pleaded. I pleaded with God to change you. This has ripped me apart. On a soul level, this was the second time that my kids ever saw me scream, cry, and grief. So this is now around number 2. This was just like a soul level betrayal. I actually got to feel him with her. There is some kind of spiritual connection there that I haven't been able to override. I thought that God had promised me that we were going to have that future. We were going to have a family. We were going to have a baby. And so him giving it to someone else, like, emotionally, it destroyed me. And I spent 2024 in a pile of myself. I stepped away from the yoga. I stepped away from really even advocating for the things that I wanted anymore. I just sort of went into like books and medicalization and statistics on maternal death. Discrepancies in race and gender equality and medicalization. And I was intrigued that I went that way, but it gave me a broader perspective on the things that we're doing and the places that we're going. I know that at 16, 19 years old, I didn't want to be a mom. And I've actually written about that on my blog page, because my parents were not safe. I was not safe at that age to become a mom. And when I look at this little one's Facebook page, and she's got it up there that, she was in the trap houses at 15, 16 years old, just getting obliterated. It's a learned behavior. She watched it most of her life, so, obviously she was going to think it was okay. Maybe this baby will save her. But let me ask you this. Even if that's the case, statistically, what chance do these kids have of ever making it out of this cyclone? Even with advanced UPK, even with the older one raising the little ones, because I'm sure that's probably been most of her life story as an eldest daughter, right? We have a 38% proficiency in English in our school district. Are these kids going to be prodigies that are going to graduate at 12 and go off to Harvard? Probably not. And that's hard. Do I think that if we had had a space that was community funded, that was available for these kids to be, that teen pregnancy would even be a thing? I don't know. That was my goal, was to preempt it. And when I watch us throw so much money at addiction recovery, okay, what are the addicts? And I'm not trying to be an a-hole here. And if you're in recovery, or if I met you through recovery, you probably know that, okay? But I have to speak truths right now, and they might be a little harsh, but it's time. A lot of this are just these kids that we fail, but we've learned how to profit off of them and recover. We built a whole employment ring out of recovery. I mean, I don't know, somewhere between like 2017 and 2020, a kid that owns Helio Health gave himself $100,000 a year raise in 1 year. $100,000. He has built that into some empire of societal failures. It's devastating, you guys. It's devastating. We send these kids off to college. Go into social work and addiction recovery. I mean, some SUNY schools have recovery programs right now as free tuition because we need addiction counselors. No, we need to reform education so that all of our teenagers aren't popping out kids and becoming drug addicts by the time they're 25. But again, we lie to ourselves. We lie through the media. We lie through obituaries. I can name about 30 kids, and this really, I was crying in grief at 4 o'clock this morning. Because I can name about 30 kids that I have lost in this town in the past 20 years to suicide and to drug addiction. And every one of those obituaries read, died suddenly, passed away unexpectedly. No, we failed them, and they died by overdose. And when the young man drove his car down the big road and put himself through the telephone pole by the big gas station, we wrote, it was a sneezing fit. We probably could have saved his damn life if we had spoken the truth and the right person had caught on. And the funny thing about that story is a couple years later, when the papa threw himself into the ravine, we got the same story. It was a sneezing fit. A couple of weeks ago when I made my last cyclone video, I talked about how I didn't go to the local studio to be teaching. And the reason for that is because there's a cycle that keeps perpetuating. And I saw it play out last week when it came out in the papers that our local law enforcement had gone into a local Genesee Street establishment and turned off their video cameras. And I don't appreciate that because there just seems to be something in this line that keeps perpetuating. And we're not rectifying it. Cocaine is a big problem in our city. Cocaine is a big problem everywhere. This is playing out across our country right now. And it is wild. And a lot of it goes back almost 100 years. And God was really a big instrument in showing me that too. And I've spoken before about how in 2015 when I got really sick and the doctors put me on all kinds of opiates and I said, I don't want to do this. I turned to the cannabis plant. So today's episode is brought to you by 3 things. The letter J for Jesus and Jill. The number 420 and the word cannabis. When we villainize the cannabis plant, we force people to start looking for alternatives, right? Especially when you couldn't get a job because you were going to be drug tested. And cannabis has a 30-day half-life, right? It stays in your system. You know what cocaine has? 72 hours. You know why they like doing cocaine? Because it's fun, but it's dangerous. Especially now, it's more dangerous. Okay. We force them into a drug culture perpetuated by Big Pharma. When Xanax was released in the 1980s, it was less than 3 years. 3 million people were taking it. Harsh truth. If you are taking any medication every day that alters your mental state, you have a drug dependency. I don't care if it's heroin or it's Xanax or salts, okay? It doesn't matter if it's legal or not, or if Big Pharma handed it to you or not, you have a drug habit. Now, escapism is real. I'm not saying it's not. But I will say that the plan allows for a little more sovereignty. It's not as highly addictive. It does up and down regulate. It does have so many medicinal applications, and we're not looking at those things, and we don't tell kids those truths. So they go into all these other addictions. especially alcohol to cocaine. Alcohol to cocaine is like a whole pipeline. And we see it in all of our local bars, but we turn a blind eye and pretend that we don't. And we put kids in these adult situations and pretend like we don't. We don't teach them boundaries. And the reason that I'm talking about this right now is because on Genesee Street, we are about to get 2 new local dispensaries. I'm a big fan of dispensaries. I like the fact that you can go in and say, hey, this is what I'm looking for, but you have to be sovereign. You have to understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. Because you cannot hand someone a power tool and not show them how to use it, because that's how they lose a finger, right? Why do I study cannabis as medicine? Well, because number one, it saved my life more than a few times. In 2024, while I was drowning in grief over all of this chaos and trying to make my heart understand, because my soul doesn't understand. My soul feels like you failed me. Like this was a divine counterpart and I thought we were going to do great things in this life and you failed me. Okay? But my rational mind has to understand that once he devolved and took himself backwards, that yeah, his mentality, unfortunately, is probably more on par with the child than it is with mine, and that's hard. But it's the only way that I've actually been able to let it go, and I think at this point I'm like, I had to give up. I lost him in the cyclone. But there are a lot of truths here. If you would like to learn about the plant, come and talk to me. If you have questions about your sovereignty, come and talk to me. If you've ever been caught in a twin flame trap where you have not been able to let someone go because you love them like probably more than you've ever loved anything in your life at a soul level, come and talk to me, because I've been told that it's a shamanic connection and that I probably won't ever be able to let it go, which means now I'm living in the duality of everyone has free will. And that was really what God was trying to show me too, I think, was that like, you know, no matter what, no matter how hard I pulled or I pushed, he had the free will to choose. And they all do, you know, but if we just keep breeding inside the cyclone and we just keep handing them false systems of education, and then we let them fall into the addictions and we hang the Narcan boxes everywhere and we breed the fear, because I will tell you that that is how they are putting those boxes everywhere. When they say to me, well, what if you go to the local coffee shop and somebody drops something in your drink? Well, that's a really shitty day. And I'm going to hope that in their medicinal arsenal with their AED that somebody has some Narcan, okay? But do I think that every single person needs to be carrying it? No. Do I think that's normalization of ignorance? Absolutely. And I'm not going to stop saying that. I'm not going to stop saying that. And not only do I not want to believe that that's the world that we live in, that people would do that, because our beliefs create our reality, we're just going to draw more of that nonsense to us, and I don't want that. But I also think that karma is very real. And I think that when you do people dirty and you betray people, that it comes back. And so we're just creating infinite loops within the cyclone. But I trust that if somebody does me really dirty, that God's going to come down on them. I can't anymore, guys, with this, just the lies that we're telling ourselves and the ways that we cover it up, because it's not helping anyone. It's not saving anyone. If anything, it's caused more division. And I said the other day on my Facebook that recovery and sobriety have really become weaponized buzzwords, like the pride flag, Black Lives Matter. Guys, they're just divisions. That's all it is. We're just dividing ourselves. You want to be a drug addict? That's cool. It's on you, you know. I'm probably not going to Narcan you. And that's one of the harshest things I've said to my kids. My son is 16 years old, and I told him, you are not going to take years of my life of me wondering where you are and if you're alive, or if you're doing ethical things, or if you're laying in a trap house somewhere. You decide you want to do something stupid like that, I will put you in a pine box. Because at least I will know where you are, and I will have some sense of peace. Because it is destroying the kids, it is destroying the parents, and it is cyclical inside this damn cyclone. And I can't do it anymore. I'm tired of it. These kids especially when they age out from the play space. They need a place to go. From the ages of 10 to 20 years old, they need a space that is free because they have no way to procure abundance, even unless they're working their dead-end job at the gas station, and then I still can't ask them for money because they need that money to survive in this atrocity we've created. They need to be able to create. They need to be learning about religions, but not just one, maybe all of them, because there are truths in all of them. Like the truth that when Saul was walking around in the desert and Jesus was walking around in the desert and they were having visions and they were having spiritual quests, you know what was happening there? They were anointed with oils. You know what those oils were made of? They were made of herbs. They were made of plant medicines. These are spiritual truths. There are always universal laws in play. And when we start to defy them and we start playing God with the medicines and we start handing out poisons and we start teaching them that it's okay to devolve into these addictions because we're going to profit off of them later, we're not winning. In 2025, something has to shift. I need community support on this, and I don't know why I didn't find a lot of it. I don't know why. But things are shifting. And in a few weeks, we're getting 2 new dispensaries. So keep an eye on your kids, teach your kids boundaries, and boundaries start when they're little. If you have toddlers, 2, 3, 4 years old, start letting them make their own decisions. Don't have your dad brig laying out on the table, okay? Have some boundaries with the things that you're doing. If you're doing drugs in the house, don't do it in front of your kids. I had a kid in recovery tell me that he was shooting up with his 2-year-old nephew laying right next to him, and he was tightening up his arm so he could stick a needle in it. And he didn't care because he was going to get high. I can't make this stuff up anymore, you guys. Like, it's not... I mean, not even anymore. I can't make any of it up because I haven't been able to lie about it because God is like, here, I'm going to show you all of this, and then you're going to have to show them that this is what is happening. So here it is. This is what I got today. I got frustration. I got sadness. I got my heart ripped out. But damn it if it didn't teach me that we are just cyclically failing all of these kids. I'm out.